Hello everyone. Today I'll be taking into a deep dive insights on 5 testing best practices that must be followed this year. So today we'll be discussing on automation testing, continuous integration and continuous deployment, monitoring, effective test planning with compatibility testing and documentation. These are the 5 best practices we have chosen for this year. However, there are few existing best practices that all will always be existing with QA, like effective test designing, effective test planning, and effective test execution. Without this, QA is incomplete. So these are the enhancement apart from those which I have mentioned earlier. So I'll be starting off with automation testing. In the recent years in automation testing, we have seen a significant evolution. For example, when we started in our organization with automation testing, the major focus was UI automation and basic functional testing. As the days progressed and we got to know a few more advantages of it, and the community evolved around Selenium and APM, we saw major changes in the frameworks, design patterns, and then integration of some plugins to yield the good results out of it. In this year, what we have seen a major changes in 2022 and 2023, we have seen a major changes. Automation testing getting integrated with artificial intelligence, which has helped the teams to achieve the test results at a great automate their automate their application at a greater efficiency and without knowing the code for the manual team. So we have some codeless automation tools like Catalan Studio, UiPath, and Test Project. These are the tools which helps a person without a coding knowledge to automate their application and execute their test cases. So with this codeless automation tools, we have seen multiple features of it, like record and play. With this ability, what we see is we record a login scenario and it can be played a number of times. And what happens is we save time and we are able to identify multiple scenarios. For example, if we give invalid results, if we want to get invalid results, or if we want to do negative scenarios, all can be covered through this record and play, and it can be used effectively. And one major advantage what we see is with normal scripting and codeless automation is what we see a major difference is, for example, in machine learning, the element identifier, for example, if there is a change in the DOM structure, which is a major problem in Selenium, if any elements is being changed with artificial intelligence, we see those kind of efforts are being reduced to a maximum extent, and we are able to add those, and we are able to eliminate those efforts, and AI itself is able to identify if there is an element change, and image processing, any image processing which we need to do. So those kind of methods and everything is being provided by this codeless tools. And the major advantage what we see is it has a better connectivity to CI/CD tools and cloud infrastructure. It can be run on multiple browsers, multiple devices, and everything. This kind of codeless tools are providing us a better platform to integrate with continuous integration and continuous development tools and cloud infrastructures. So moving on to the next topic is continuous integration and continuous deployments in testing. CI/CD has played a major role actually in over the years. Like it has provided testers to move to shift left. Using shift left method, we are able to identify the bugs in the early stage of the testing life cycle. And due to this, we see that bugs which are very costly to be fixed at the end of the testing life cycle or development life cycle, these bugs are detected early and we are able to reduce the cost of fixing those bugs. And what we see is CI/CD for automation is completely a different pipeline. How it goes for a development, a developer checks in the code, and that is being pushed to the production, or it's been pushed to the stage environment, and the testing happens. Similarly, there is a separate test setup that is needed for automation testing also. For example, an automation engineer writes a code, and that code is being pushed to the git. Once it's been pushed, it should be pushed to the infrastructure, and that code is run rigorously to make sure that there is the automation code does not break at any given point of time. And the major benefits, what we have seen from CI/CD is integrating with API testing. We identify that any APIs are failing, or any changes needs to be done, or any kind of thing. API testing and adding our new APIs to that suite so that it runs rigorously on our stage environment. And adding performance testing like load detecting the page load issues, load test cases, and stress test cases to the CI/CD helps us to detect performance issues as soon as the feature is being released to the stage environment. And DevSecOps, with this we have seen like it's been integrated with multiple tools. We are able to identify the vulnerabilities at the earliest of the life cycle. Like we have few tools which have been integrated, like SonarCube, and there are some OAuths which can be integrated with CI/CD pipeline to detect the vulnerabilities at the earlier of the testing lifecycle. So moving on to the next topic, we have is continuous monitoring and implementing continuous monitoring. Here, there are many things which we can discuss on this, because the major part in continuous monitoring is it helps the tester to identify from starting of the testing lifecycle to the end, from the test planning to the test execution, and monitoring those results. A tester would get a detailed insight of this, and this cannot only help the testers. Continuous monitoring can help everybody. For example, developer, a engineer, or a IT infrastructure engineer, or the tester, to get to know what's happening within the application once it's been published to the stage environments or to the production. So infrastructure, there are three things which majorly which we need to be monitored: infrastructure, application, and network monitoring. Infrastructure basically which we monitor is the system performance, and everything is up to the mark, and there is no lag or anything happening when a new feature or a new version is being released to the stage environment. And application monitoring, application health is good, and those things which we monitor. And network monitoring, and we have implemented one of the major we have implemented a major critical aspect for monitoring is what we have done is we have written a certain critical test cases that's been done by the users. If we consider any application, there would be set of test cases that are very critical for the customer, and those shouldn't break at any given point of time. And what we have done is we have created such a framework that any failure for these important test cases, it gives us an alert, and these are run 24 by 7, and always helps us to detect an issue before the customer reach out to us. So this is with respect to continuous monitoring. I would be moving further. So we have effective test planning with compatibility testing. Here, what we see is there are two major things, like how we are going to select the devices. For example, when we release a product, there are two aspects which we need to consider: is the application new, or the application is already used by the customers. If it's a new application, there are major things we consider always. For example, when we have a new application that is getting released, if we consider any e-commerce application like Flipkart, if a persons are releasing for the first time in the industry or to the market, we consider few aspects like which is my target audience. If it is India, we are going to select the devices based on the module which is being uh, used by the users the most, then versions, and those things like resolutions, hardware, other things which we consider those things to set target audience, and then we test on those devices and then release it to the Play Store or App Store, anywhere. It could be with iOS and Android, both the devices. When coming to the best practices to choose the devices for already existing user, we have major things which we need to keep in mind. We need to get few more details, like which is our users, which application versions are users using a lot. For example, Android 9, 10, 11, 12 should be my target, which I should use the most, or detect at this particular region which is a uh, device which we need to consider a lot. And based on those, or create a framework or database, so that identifying a device model on which our applications are running, and those things, based on that we determine that which applications, on which the applications can be run and executed for the testing. And the best practice what we can do over here is the data needs to be reviewed every 3 months to make sure that we meet the user requirements and we use the device similar to the user, so that we are not deviated and user uses a different device and we use the different device, so there shouldn't be any contradictory between the both. So moving out to the next topic, what we have is documentation. In documentation always we see, like as I told you before also, there are few existing best practices which needs to be followed, like planning, document planning, execution and designing. When we are doing these things, all those documents are very critical as a test engineer, which we need to have it irrespective of any team which we work. For example, if you're working with performance team or automation team as a manual functional tester, the very important is the execution which we do, our test plans, our test cases, test results are the backbone for a QA to make sure that this has been documented, and this can serve as that if any fault occurs in the future, we are sure that this has been executed and this is due to some errors or any buggy code which has been introduced to the stage environment or the production environment. So without this documentation, I think QA or any team cannot save themselves or cannot hide what's been done wrong or anything. We need to be having a very good documentation over here. In in case of like failures in automation, we need to we have a mechanism to capture logs, device logs, and screenshots. What happens over here is whenever the execution is done, major frameworks doesn't have like inclusion of capture the network logs at that given point of time, device logs and screenshot. With these things, it is very odd. This can be integrated to our CI/CD to make sure that the bug has been logged with all the given information, and we capture all the informations which is needed by the developer to fix the bugs. It should be completely automatic mechanism, or if you're logging in manually also, these are the very important things that needs to be captured and given to the dev team, or we only analyze what the issue is, why these kind of issues are happening. So no, next topic, like for example, we discussed 5 best practices from automation to CI/CD, continuous monitoring, and then coming to then we had monitoring, documentation, and everything. So when we come to these things, all 5 best practices, we have an AstroFarm tool from 42 guests, which easily lets your company to integrate all your devices. For example, you have devices which are in US, UK, other offices, like if you consider around the globe, you can connect it to a single hub, and that hub anybody can access from your company and they can use it at any point of time. For example, a device which is present in US or UK, they can take that access. A person from India can use it at any given point of time for as long as they want. They can use those devices. So very important feature what we discussed is automation as a best practice. With AstroFarm, we see like it gives us a option to integrate with APM and Selenium, where we can just plug in our automation which is already been developed. We can just run those to AstroFarm, and it can be executed on devices, and it can be it can be a combination of both servers and plus devices. Majorly we target on the device side, So APM can be used over there with iOS and Android. Both the support has been provided over there. And CI/CD tool. So as we have written a completely code and that has been integrated to our CI/CD, just running our ADB commands and basic commands, we are able to integrate with Jenkins and plug in the device and execute the code which has already been developed. And this can be similar to pushing your code to the production and testing that. And real-time monitoring, we have a very effective feature. For example, you're running your automation suite. Uh, we are running our automation suite from uh, test 1 to test 10. So we can just identify at which point of time what was our CPU utilization, memory utilization, which can yield us a good result so that we can identify at this particular test case, this was my CPU utilization, and we can capture those which is consuming memory and those things with respect to the real devices. Yeah, hi team. Any questions you can just post in.
We have a question.
Mhm.
So the question is, what tools and frameworks do you recommend for automation testing and why?
Tools basically which we have a Selenium integrated with multiple IDE. It's a Selenium is a jar, I think, which we can use it if you are looking for an open source tool, and it has multiple integration with Eclipse, IntelliJ, and other things which we can use it. And if you are looking for mobile devices, we can have it APM integrated with other IDs, and we can use those for mobile automation. If you're looking for like paid tools, we have Catalan Studio, we have Test Project, and we have UiPath, and those can be used over there. And when we say for the frameworks, there are multiple frameworks available. However, the best one till date, what we have seen, which yields a good result, is it depends on the team to team. For example, if we are saying like um, design page object module is one of the mostly used across the automation, and we have other things like if BA team is using, we use it as business BDD frameworks which we use. So there are multiple frameworks, data driven frameworks. Based on the projects we can implement those.
Okay, thank you, Shabir. There's another question. So what advice do you have for teams just starting out with automation tests?
Okay. uh, so the first thing is whenever we start with an automation, we need to make sure like we need to identify if your application supports automation or not. There are few prerequisites that needs to be run. For example, Selenium IDE, there's one tool which helps you to identify whether your tool can be automated or not. So if we are able to use that tool and record and play with that particular tool, and if we see that if it is able to support, it's 100% sure that our application would be able to support the automation. Based on those criteria and POCs, we should be able to uh, judge which application can be automated and which cannot be automated.
Question from
Yeah.
Mohammed. There are two questions. One, any monitoring tools that can be used to monitor system performance?
Mhm.
Uh,
For system performance, yes.
Go ahead, Shabir.
Oh, yeah. For system performance, there are few tools like if we have an open source tools, we have like JMeter, which has like performance monitor to it. From that, we can monitor the system performance, network behaviors, and everything from that. And if we are looking for like if our application is hosted on cloud, we have multiple options provided by um, CloudWatch, and from AWS we have CloudWatch and monitoring systems, which gives the system health and event triggers at any given point of time when there is a bad health.
Hope that answers your question, Mohammed. There's another question from him. How do we decide which tool to be used in application automation?
Okay, as I told before, also I think it's the same thing. We
Uh,
need to identify our application, and then we need to work we need to see how the POC works. For example, that tools is suited for us, and we need to make sure that automation would yield us the results, and this application can be automated using the Selenium IDE and few other more techniques which we have to identify. Based on that, we can decide which tool to be used.
Okay, thank you, Shabir. Another question for you. How do you prioritize which tests to automate and which to keep as manual tests?
So there are few things which cannot be handled in automation. So those kind of test cases which we tend to avoid it. For example, automation we need to cover a larger scope. For example, if we are considering a login scenario, a search scenario, we should make sure we can cover everything, all the possible inputs and outputs at that particular fields, and make sure that these all the inputs and outputs have been validated, and we get the results out of it. While considering for manual test cases, there are few challenges that cannot be handled through automation, like multiple like navigating from one application to another, and going and taking an access of it, and you're performing some actions. Complex scenarios which are totally cannot be automated, I think those can be considered into manual, and major focus should be given to the regression suite. And we need to make sure that all the possible input and output scenarios have been covered through automations. Hope that
Okay,
answers.
yeah. Uh, so another question, is automation testing in agile methodology useful?
Automation testing in agile methodology, yes, it is useful, because as soon as any we would be starting our automation at the earliest of the software testing life cycle, so that we identify our automation will be started as early as possible. It's easy to detect bugs as early as possible, so in a sprint we should be, it would yield us very good results when we have this one.
Okay, I think that is all from the audience. So if you have any questions or if you would like to, try out our private device farm product called AstroFarm, you can reach out to us at product marketing at 42 gears. Or if you have any questions for Shabir, you can reach out to him on the email address displayed on the screen. Uh, so just a moment, we have another question. So what is the scope of artificial intelligence or machine learning in automating the test scenario?
So, as I told you before, there are few tools that has been integrated. A few codeless tools that they're like Catalan Studio and test projects. They've already integrated to identify the elements and everything, and automatically write the code on the user scenarios. Recently, I was what I have seen with ChatGPT and these things is they're able to give the complete framework implementation from zero. If you want to implement any kind of frameworks, we are easily able to get those, and just what we need to do is just carry forward those things. So I think AI would be the game changer going forward to for element identifications and everything with respect to browsers and mobile applications. Hope this answers the question.
Thank you, Shabir. So thank you so much everyone for joining today's session. So if you have any questions for us, just drop an email to the email addresses shown on the screen, and we'll be in touch with you.